President Trump is turning up the pressure on China, now threatening new tariffs on imported cars. My next guest has been railing against China for years, openly voicing his support for the president's stance towards Beijing. And guess what? He's a Democrat. Joining me right now is Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan. Congressman, so good to have you here. Let's start first off with your thoughts. What are they on the current situation with China?
My real deep concern with China is that they have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 30-year plan, 50-year plan, 100-year plan. It's economic, it's military, it's educational, it's investments. They're trying to be the #1 country in the top 10 industries in the world with additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence, wind, solar, rail, space, aerospace. They have this 100-year plan, and if you don't think it's working, just look what they told the top government official in China. They said, we're going to get rid of term limits, so just keep going. You're doing a great job. In the United States, this is my great fear, we live in a 24-hour news cycle. What is the grand strategy for how we are going to position ourselves against China? Russia too, but mostly economically China. And my fear is we have no plan right now.
Well, we seem to have more of a plan than we've had in the past, right? I mean, look, I'm with you. I think we're on the same page on this one. He has promised to reduce these tariffs. I'd like to see the White House do more as well. I think that President Trump himself has made that case. In fact, just yesterday said that he would like to see a better outcome right now on China. If you reduce tariffs from 25% on cars to 15%, that's something, but it's not enough, especially when we're only charging 2.5%.
Well, we've got to do something here in the United States for us to compete against them. They have 1.3, 1.4 billion people. We only have 330 million people. And right now, we don't have a strategy on how we're going to ramp our economy up in these other areas like I was talking about, artificial intelligence, space, aerospace, additive manufacturing. We need to get these programs on steroids in the United States. We need to make sure our education system is in place to make sure we have enough STEM college graduates. We've got to make investments in research to make sure we're doing it. Here's a kicker, too, that I think the viewers would find very, very important. The tax cut that was passed will end up being about $2.3 trillion in borrowed money. And a lot of that is going to be from China, when 80% of it went to primarily the top 5 or 10% of the people in the country. But we're borrowing that money from China. So if we're trying to compete with China, take on China, we're borrowing money from them, and now they're our banker. They're taking the interest that we pay them on the money we borrow, and they're putting it into all these programs to gain an economic advantage.
Well,
they're building bases in Africa. They control the South China Sea now. And we better get our act together before it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, another separate conversation, because I think we needed those tax cuts and we need to be more competitive. I hear you, the debt levels are not exactly sustainable. And it's uncomfortable, I get it, that China is the one lending the money. But we also have a little bit leverage in part because we got to pay it back, right? You think back to the subprime crisis and how the banks really wanted the homeowners to stay in the house and not walk away and give the key. That said, let me ask you about something else that's happening right now. The White House today announcing a push for new tariffs on imported cars just days after the president said he's not pleased, as I mentioned, with the results of the recent trade talks in China. Do you think this is a smart move economically to put these tariffs on any foreign car coming into the U.S. right now?
Well, I think anything that's going to give the American auto worker and the American car company an advantage, we need to look into. And I think that may be one tactic. But again, that's a tactical move. That's not a big strategy. And we don't know what that tactic is going to feed into anyway. So, and you know, and here's the... I mean, I try to support the president where I can on tariffs and on these things, but he switches his position the next day, and he leaves those of us who are trying to be supportive of the position out to dry.
Well, not entirely. He's not switching his position on China right now. I mean, the steel and aluminum tariffs, as Mnuchin pointed out, they have stayed, and he has said he's not happy with what Wilbur Ross and Mr. Mnuchin are working out thus far. So, look, I give you credit. I give you credit because a lot of people just take opportunities to criticize him regardless, right? And what I appreciate about you, Congressman, and I think that this is the way of the future, you're looking at specific policies and saying what works, what doesn't work, what's good for your constituents. Does the rest of the Democratic Party get that right now?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of them would be willing to work with the president on issues. I think infrastructure, if there was a realistic infrastructure bill, that we would be willing to do that. I think Senator Schumer has noted that. In fact, they have put forth a couple of pretty robust agenda items that I think the president should be able to support. And we've got to look. It's not about me. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about our constituents that we represent and their struggle. And so if there's issues we agree on, we have an obligation to them to move on.
You got to give that message to Nancy Pelosi, okay? We'll see if you can work on it. Hey, Congressman Ryan, it's great to see you. I know you're en route to Ohio, so thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.